Hey everybody, just wanted to do a quick walkthrough of the shop. I say quick, it probably won't be quick. I'll just kind of go around the shop and explain a little bit of what things are and where I'm at, some upcoming projects I've got, and yeah, go from there. It's actually fairly clean. Well, let's be honest, it's really clean compared to how it normally is. I'm actually hosting a poker tournament this weekend, so gave me some ambition to get out here and clean all this crap up. Um, Having a small space is mostly not a good thing, but the only good thing that I can come up with about having a small space is you pretty much have to keep it clean in order to get some work done. So anyway, this is from the outside looking in. Gonna shut the door. I'll just start on this end. Sorry, door's a little bit loud. Anyway, this end, let's see, that contraption right there is a pretty old hydraulic tubing bender that I made. Made it from some plans. It's called a Gotrix bender. If anybody's done any tube bending, you're probably familiar with it. It's a really straightforward little machine. It just uses an air over hydraulic cylinder to push a ram up, which pulls a die and then bends your tubing. But I used it to make all kind of stuff like roll cages and stuff like that for Jeeps. But anyway, that's that. Small compressor. I've had it. Let's see. I've had that compressor probably 12 years now, and has done everything I've ever asked it to do up until this point. I'm going to be in the market very, very soon for a new compressor. The main reason being is that I'm in the middle of building a CNC plasma table, which will require a little bit more flow than this thing has, a little bit more CFM. So I'll have to upgrade to a bigger tank and a bigger pump and all that good stuff, which not a big deal. Like I said, that thing has definitely paid for itself over the years. But anyway, let's see. What's back there? That's the pressure washer. Pressure washer back there. Here's the CNC mill. Back up a little bit. It's certainly not finished yet. I don't think it's ever going to be finished. I've just made myself admit that. But anyway, it's getting closer. I've actually made some chips with it since I've put it into the new enclosure. I built this enclosure for it to be able to run flood coolant and also to keep the mess and crap that it makes, off of my shop floor, basically. I'll have some doors here made. I haven't made those yet. I'm pretty sure I said that on the last video I made. So anyway, I've got the machine dialed back in. As you can see, there's chips all over it. I made a few cuts and some test runs the other day, just getting the gib strips tightened up and making sure that everything's good and tight on the machine, backlash, all that stuff is good. Not only did I build the enclosure, but I put all new ball screws and uh, hardware and stuff in it. I've also, this is probably the second or third spindle motor that I've had on there. This is a treadmill motor. It's a 2 horsepower treadmill motor, Nordic track motor. Excuse me, and I converted it to belt drive at the same time. This ghetto duct tape stuff up here, don't mind that. That's actually a let's see if I can turn it on. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it's a big 120 volt, kind of like a computer fan. And I've just got it literally taped on the end of this motor because it was getting kind of hot. And believe it or not, it actually works really well to keep it cool. I ran a big, huge, I don't know, 60,000 line engraving, an engraving program the other night just to make sure it wouldn't overheat. And yeah, the spindle bearings were all good. The motor was nice and cool. So no issues. And that was, with it wide open. Of course, there's not much of a load on it when you're engraving, but anyway, it didn't overheat, which is the main thing. So I put new bearings in the spindle, new grease, new angular contact bearings, the good stuff. All good hand packed ball screws. I mean, it's got pretty much immeasurable backlash at this point. Very minute amount, if any. The enclosure has lights. Hey, lights. So you can see in there pretty well. Still got to hook up the home and limit switches. All the wiring is ran. It's run for it. It's right there. It's just a matter of hooking it all up. in my spare time. This machine used to be an Optimum BF20L, which is basically sold in Germany. I bought it when I lived in Germany several years ago, and it came with an MT2 taper, which I made do with for many years. And when I went back and redid all the spindle bearings and all the motors and all that good stuff, I went ahead and decided to swap it all over to the R8 taper in the spindle. So now I'm using all the TTS, the Tormach tooling system. So I'm kind of getting familiar with that. I literally just got the adapter collet today from Little Machine Shop. So I threw that in there and I've ordered hundreds of dollars of tooling, or holders at least, Tormach holders with collet holders and set screw holders for end mills and stuff like that. Just haven't come in yet. But anyway, I had that edge finder, which is a Tormach tool, and I just decided to stick it up in there and see how it feels. It's really simple. It's going to work really well, I think. And it should make my life a lot easier as far as setting my tool height, my offsets and stuff. So anyway, that's a lot of information. So left to do on this thing, like I said, home and limit switches. I've ordered all new way covers. This is just some rubber mat that I'm going to put on the back side of the Y-axis. I've ordered a new way cover for the front side of the Y, and for the column for the Z. They've gotten torn up over the years, so I ordered new ones from Grizzly. The Grizzly G0704, pretty much identical to this machine. Slight differences, but not a lot. So I'm able to order all my parts from Grizzly for the most part and get them here fairly easily. So those should be here in the next day or two. So I'll get all the way covers on, get everything cleaned up, put the home and limit switches on, get those dialed in, and that will be that as far as the milling machine. It's pretty much ready to go. I still need to, like I said, make the doors for the milling enclosure. And I'm not super happy with the treadmill motor as a spindle motor. I'm using this little MC60, which is just a standard treadmill controller. I got this thing off eBay, fairly cheap. It's like I said, I'll fire it up for you. Very simple, just a dial here from 0 to 100 scale, depending on how many RPM you want to go. But it's you got your left and right there. I'm just not super happy with it. It doesn't seem to have it's just not really smooth, to be honest with you. I've put 2 different motors on it now. Just thought maybe the old used motor that I had was bad, but I bought a new one and it's not really much better. So what I've done, this is just another one of the projects I've got coming up. And this is a 3-phase, 2 horsepower, I think around 4,000 RPM, 3-phase motor, AC motor. And this is, of course, VFD, which I'll use to power the motor. And I'm going to run all my controls through this box that I'm still going to wire up. You may recognize this. I'm just going to use the actual control panel from the milling machine that it was on there from the stock from the factory. But that's a project I've got coming up. This thing is working as far as the treadmill motor. I mean, it actually works. I can machine stuff. Just not super happy with it, so I went ahead and purchased all that other stuff to one day make a project to put that on. Obviously, that motor in the drawer down there is a lot bigger than this treadmill motor. Weighs a lot more too. I know several guys who've used motors that size with no problem, but I probably am going to add 2 gas lifting struts on each side of the head just to kind of help with the weight of it. So that should be fairly straightforward once I actually get around to it. But anyway, not super high on the priority list because it actually is working, like I said. So, but otherwise, once I get the doors on the enclosure and get everything else tidied up, the only thing I have left to do is finish hooking up the coolant system, which I'm going to run flood coolant. There's that plastic container is the reservoir for the coolant that I'm going to run. Planning on using Qualichem just because it seems to be pretty highly regarded, and it's fairly cheap. You can buy it by the gallon, which will last me forever out here, the way you dilute it. But planning on just running like a sump pump type, so it'll be flood coolant. So hopefully I'll have some good flow to get rid of some chips. We'll see how it works. I'm sure I'll have to tinker with it and dial it in. But anyway, I'll move on because the video is getting kind of long. Let's see, what else? So I'll do another separate video on this thing. This is my new lathe. New to me, obviously. It's quite old otherwise. If you'll remember my last video, one of my last videos had the old Atlas lathe that I had, much smaller unit. The Atlas was a 10 inch by 36 inch lathe, which I had done a lot of work to. Really enjoyed it. It was a really awesome lathe. I had a lot of fun rebuilding the old lathe. It was just too damn small, and this is now my third lathe officially. I had started off with a little 7 by 14 German Optimum lathe, which was entirely too small. Then the Atlas, which seemed like a huge lathe compared to that one, I quickly outgrew it. So this is a 15 by 60, and it's actually a gap bed lathe, and I think it goes up to 22 on the gap as far as a swing. Anyway, it's old. It's an Italian made. It's made by Pasquino, which is an Italian company. I had to do some research on it. There's not many in the States. There's mostly European models, but it does have inch screws on it and inch dials, so it's all good. It will cut metric and English threads. But yeah, the previous owner, I got it from a local machine reseller here. Actually traded in my Atlas lathe for it. They slapped a paint job on it. To be honest, it's a pretty shitty paint job, but it works. It's not rusted. It's not chipped all up yet. For now, it'll be fine. I had to build a backsplash for it because it didn't have one. So I made this backsplash just out of some 1 inch square tubing all welded together. And it's got a drip pan that goes down into the chip pan for the coolant return, which is something that's kind of new for me. I've never had a lathe yet that had coolant on it. So I'm interested to see how much different that's going to make. I know I've had some heat issues before with the other lathes, so hopefully that'll work itself out. What else? I added a VFD because it's 3-phase. It's a big ass. I don't know what size. I think 3 horsepower motor on the back, and it's 3-phase. So I don't have 3-phase here at my home, obviously. So VFD, just a cheap eBay special, did the trick, and very simple to hook up. I've never run really a VFD before this, but I was a little skeptical, but it works great. I mean, really awesome. So turn it on for you real quick. For as big as it is and as old as the lathe is, it's actually a pretty quiet machine. That's the VFD fan making all that noise, but I'll turn it on. So that's it. It's wide open. The motor is anyway. I'll turn the chuck on here. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot to it, really. And of course, being that it's a VFD, I can actually vary my RPMs just based on whatever hertz I want to send to the motor. So if I need more RPM, I can bump it up a little bit without having to do a lot of gear switching or gear changing on the lathe itself. But anyway, like I said, it had a paint job slapped on it. You can see that hole down there. Let's look at this mess. That is some god-awful smelling oily coolant. I guess that's where the coolant tank and pump is on this thing. I'm going to clean that out. I'm kind of putting it off because it doesn't seem like a fun job, but the white bin next to it, right there underneath it, will be my new coolant tank. And it just runs off that chip pan. You can see the hole back in the back of the chip pan. It just drains down into it. So what I'm going to do, I've just got a little sump pump for like a boat. A lot of guys use these. This is the 500. With a lathe, you don't need a ton of flow. I just need some coolant basically to drip on my part or my tool. But this is variable speed. I'm sure you can hear it. Obviously, with the wires twisted up, it's just temporary. I haven't actually finished it yet, as with a lot of my projects. Anyway, that's pretty straightforward. The controller and stuff is very similar to the uh, to the lead screw motor that I did on my Atlas. It's basically the same thing. You can get them off eBay very cheap, like 15, 20 bucks. And it's just a DC motor controller is all it is. But anyway, that's that. I still need to, what do I need to do on this thing? I still need to get a digital readout set up for it because it's a lot easier to use with a digital readout, obviously. You can use it without it, but it's just so much easier to have that digital on there. So I'll get that. Probably my next big purchase for that thing will be the digital readout. I do need to get some more tooling and tool holders for it because this is the BXA size quick change, and all of my old stuff was AXA. So I let it go with the other lathe because it wouldn't do me any good on this lathe. So all my tool holders that I had have to be repurchased. And kind of tooling it up now, not in a big hurry. I mean, I've got a few things that I can use, just some simple turning items if I need to just turn something or thread some stuff. But that's that. Let's see. I'm going to pause it now because it's really long, and then we'll start another video. This will be part 1.